Hi, everybody. This is Pamela Price with PamTech. And in this video, we're going to talk about getting started with front-end development. Talk a little bit about what front-end development is, and then talk a little bit about the tools and how to get your environment set up. So first of all, at a very big picture, when you look at web applications, you've got the internet, right? We have all different devices that we're connected to the internet. And you have applications that are sitting on servers somewhere, right? Web pages and applications are sitting on servers. And we get access to those through the internet, through the URL that we actually put in order to bring up a particular site, right? And so these applications have what's called a front end and a back end. And the front end is what presents to you, what you see on the web page, the actual user interface, how it looks and how it is designed. And the back end is typically where actual action kind of happens. So, for example, if you are buying something from Amazon, there's a back end, and that's where the database is that is allowing you access to all the different products that you're browsing, and you can put them in your cart. That all has to get stored in a database, and you can actually have your order process. So you've got client side things that happen and server side things that happen at a very big picture. Okay. So what kind of web development roles are there? Again, just a big overview for you and before we actually get into more specifics about front end. So even just talking about the front end, before you actually do the coding of the website, somebody has to create the look and feel of the application and user experience. So that's considered a user interface or a user experience designer. Then a front-end developer deals with the things actually coding that and making it, appear on the page. A back-end developer, again, deals with the servers and the databases and that sort of thing. And a full stack developer can do both front and back-end development. So again, in front end, you've got dealing with just the design of the application and then converting that design into code. Okay. So a front-end developer implements that design using HTML, CSS, sometimes JavaScript, sometimes other frameworks. A front-end developer has to make sure that the design is responsive and works on different devices. And so they collaborate with designers and back-end developers, and they deal with, fixing bugs, adding new features. All right, so in terms of languages, there are lots and lots and lots of computer languages, but this is usually what you get started with in terms of learning web development. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. That is the structure of your web page. CSS is what makes it pretty, and JavaScript is what makes it do something. So if we think about a car, HTML is like, the parts, the engine, the doors, the whatever, and how they are put together to just build the car. CSS is what color is your car? How fancy are your rims? Are your windows tinted? What color are the seats? That sort of thing. You add style to it. And JavaScript is what makes it go. When you hit the accelerator, it goes. When you hit the brake, it stops. So it provides action. All right, now what we're going to focus on for beginners is HTML and CSS. Those are the first two languages that you typically learn. And part of that is because they're a very easy starting point. All you need to get started is a text editor and a browser. Um, there are some online coding environments that you can use like Replit or CodePen, but I'm going to show you how to get started with a text editor and a browser. You also do need to understand file structure, how to create folders and files in your environment, whether you're on a Mac or a Windows machine. All right, so in terms of text editors, there are lots of options, but the number one suggestion that I have is for you to use VS Code or Visual Studio Code. And if you just Google VS Code, right, text editor, that will get you to that page. You would go here, you just need to download the version for your computer and install it. All right, and I'm going to show you a little bit about VS Code. Another option is Sublime. Now, again, you look up Sublime text editor, right? And download that. But I would recommend VS Code if you're able to do that. Now, you might say, well, why do I need, what's a text editor? Why can't I use, I don't know, Microsoft Word, right? Microsoft Word is not a plain text editor. It is a word processor. And what we need is just a plain text editor. So again, it needs to be VS Code, Sublime, or something like that, that is a plain text editor. Now, there are lots of browsers. You have Chrome, you have Firefox, you have Safari, Edge, and you can use any of them, but there are some developer tools that we like to use in Chrome. And so I want to recommend that you make sure when you are working on your web pages that you're using the Chrome browser. Okay. Now, um, anytime a web page or a website typically is made up of multiple files. You will have, in the simplest of example, one HTML file, which is the structure of your page, one CSS file, which is the styling of your page, and possibly JavaScript if you're doing action. But we're just going to be talking about static web pages right now. And so you need to organize these files. So you typically want to create a folder, a project folder that will hold all the files for any given project. So you want to create a folder and then open it in your text editor. So that means you have to know how to create, how and where you want to create folders on your environment. I could, for example, I'm on a Mac, I could right click and create a new folder. You can do this on a PC as well, right? Maybe I call it first web page, okay? Or if you have things organized, for example, I have a folder called My Files. And if I wanted to create it inside of here, I would do new folder, right? But I'm going to leave mine on the desktop. The important thing is you need to know where you created this folder and be able to access it through the file system. So I am going to open up, I'm going to use VS Code, and I'm going to open up VS Code now that I've created the folder, and show you what we're going to do. So in VS Code, I am going to open a folder because again, eventually there will be multiple files in there and you want to open the folder and that will give you access to all the files. So I open folder and I'm going to go find that folder that I created. Remember I called it first web page? So I just click on that and click open. Now, there's nothing in that file right now. I'm just going to close that up. There's no files in that folder right now, right? This is my folder. There's nothing there. In VS Code, this is how you can create a new file. This is also how you can create a new folder. Sometimes you need to do that, but we'll get to that later on. So right now, I'm going to create a new file. The name of your HTML file, your first HTML file, should always be index.html, right? Now, can it be something different? It can, but typically every web page has index.html as the main page. If you have multiple pages in your website, then you will name those other pages accordingly. Like if you have an about page, maybe you would call that about.html, but we're going to just start with index.html, okay? While I'm here, I actually want to also tell you that VS Code has extensions Or think of this kind of like an app store that can have little things that can help you out. And one of the extensions that is very useful is called Live Server. So if I search for that, this is the extensions. You see, I have it already installed. If you don't, then you should install this. If you end up using Sublime, that's fine. You don't need Live Server. We'll show you some other ways to do it. But if you use VS Code, Live Server is quite useful. All right, now let's go look a little bit at what a web page looks like. So we're going to start with our HTML. And HTML is a language, so it has its own particular syntax that you must pay attention to. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And an HTML file basically has two sections. So you see here, this is the most fundamental structure of an HTML file. And you notice these angle brackets, these are part of the HTML syntax. So this first thing tells me that what this is an HTML document. And inside, these things are all called tags. And so I have an HTML tag that defines everything that is a part of this document. And notice that is what's called an opening tag. And with the slash in front of it, this is what is called a closing tag. Inside of your HTML document, there are two main sections. There is this head section with an opening and closing tag. There is this body section with an opening and closing tag. I want you to notice this indenting. It's not required, but it's very helpful that allows you to sort of see when things are nested inside of each other. Right now, I could just type this in, but one of the benefits of using a text editor, and in particular, what these text editors are is they are context specific. That means when I create a file called index.html, this text editor knows I am going to be using HTML syntax, and it will try to help me. And so there are a few what's called snippets that we can use. Let me go back to here. And if I start typing in HTML and I go here to HTML5, then this gives me a whole starting point. All right. So that's one way to get it. I think the other way is bang, bang. Well, that just gives me the beginning. All right. So yes, we're going to do HTML5 and here's my starting point. So the point is, you don't have to remember how to set this up, and you shouldn't. You should use a snippet to do this. So we've got, this says this is an HTML document. I know some of this was not in my very bare bones example on that slide, but this says that this document is in the English language. Here are my two sections. By the way, if you want to put empty lines anywhere, blank lines in your code, that's fine. That can be good sometimes in terms of helping you really be clear about these different sections. The template does not indent head and body, so that's okay. But everything inside of the head section is indented. Everything inside of the body section should be indented. Now, the head section is it's a container for metadata. And metadata just means data about data. So if we look at what's over here, this has to do with kind of my keyboard character set. These are some things that have to do with my browser window. We don't really want to worry about those things right now. The title is where I can set up what I want to see in the tab of my web page. So I'm just going to put first web page here. You can put whatever you want to in there. The body section contains your actual content of your HTML document. Okay? Now, a programming language has rules. It's very important that you pay attention. You've got to focus on detail. Many times the problems that you'll have in the beginning will just be typos in syntax. So you have to get used to paying attention to this. HTML is not a case-sensitive language. Some are. JavaScript is, for example. But best practice is to just type your HTML pretty much all in lowercase. You have to notice that most tags have a closing tag, but there are a few that don't. Again, as you start learning this language, you'll learn these things. And again, these things are special keywords that have to be spelled properly in order for you to understand. So let me just do, to get us started, even if you don't know the tags, I can just put content on here. So I can just put in here my first web page, right? Now, how do I view this? Because programming, in particular HTML, is cause and effect. You type something and something is going to change on your web page. Now, when you have live server installed, then all I need to do here is right click on my index.html file and say open with live server. And here's my web page, right? Here's my content. The only thing that's in it is here. So all this stuff at the top is not actual content for your web page. Only what is here inside of this body section is actual content for your web page. Just so you know, another way that you can do this if you don't have live server. So here is my folder that I just opened up, and here's my index.html file. And if I just double click on it, it is going to open in the browser. So that's another way to get to it. Sometimes you in Windows, you might need to right click and you can say, or even here, if you wanted to open it in a different browser, right? You right click and I could say open it in Safari, and that would be the same thing. Okay, so let me talk a little bit more about this. We're going to just do a couple of basic tags here just to get used to. So if I'm going to have a heading, for example, there are a number of heading tags in HTML, H1 to H6. So notice right now, this is just in whatever size font it is because I've not really controlled what it's supposed to look like. But so I'm going to go here. If you want to try to have proper indenting and you're not quite sure what to do, the best thing to do is to go to the line above where you want to enter something. Watch what happens when I hit enter. You see how that automatically indents? This context sensitive editor knows that I am about to put something inside of the body of this page. And so it's a nested element, so it indents it. So let me put H1. Notice what just happened. When I typed the H1 tag, the closing tag got automatically set up for me to try to help me to make sure that maybe I don't forget to do that. All right. That's again a benefit of using this. So I'm going to put this inside of here. All right. You need to, every time you make a change and you want to see that change, you need to save. Or in VS Code, you should just click here and set up autosave so that your work is constantly being saved. And look at what happens. Now the page was updated, and now we see this text in as an H1. Okay, so that's again one of the benefits of doing that. All right, let's talk about just a couple more things here, actually, while I'm here. So, it's very easy sometimes so there's also, for example, an H2, okay? Suppose I do something like this. Uh, this is H2, but, maybe I mess this up and I close this as an H1. All right, so look at that. They look the same because, oh, Sorry, it actually did. All right, I have something that's actually forcing this to help me not make the mistake that I'm trying to make for you right now. Uh, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do it because of something that I have on. But what I want to show you, let's just make them H2s. You see an H2 is a different size, right? Now, sometimes you want to make sure that you have your closing tags on something. So look, if I click here on head, it's showing me where the closing tag is. If I click here on H2, it's showing me where the closing tag is. Let me actually do this. This might be a little mistake that I can make. I'm going to move this way in the wrong place. Yeah, that's still okay. I don't want to do that. Um, so when in doubt about your closing tags, just click on a tag and you can see where the closing tag is. Also notice the colors here. The colors here are telling me that these are keywords. So for example, there's no such thing as an H9. Yeah, but it still does that. Can I just make up? All right, I think because I'm using the angle brackets, it assumes it's a tag. So all your tags are going to be in this brown color. You see basically my just regular text is here in black. And these are special keywords that are in red here. All right. Um, then last little bit here, CSS is how you make your page pretty. And I'm going to just do one little piece of CSS here just to show you if I needed to add my CSS here. First of all, I need to have a link to a CSS file. And there is a little snippet here. If I start typing li link CSS, and because I don't want to get into all the syntax right now, and here is where I specify the name of my CSS file. So this is kind of a default name, but that means I need to create a file by that name. So I'm going to go over here and create a new file in the same directory, style.css. And CSS has its own different syntax. And if I want to change the background color of this page, for example, then remember the body section is all of my content. And so I select the body. I have to use these curly brackets to enclose any formatting that I want to do to the body. And what I'm going to set up is a background color of pink. All right. And there we go. We see that we have our background color of pink, right? Uh, we talked about Chrome. I mentioned that Chrome is good because there are developer tools that we'll be learning to use. If you right click on your page and go to inspect, right? So here is where we can see some information about our elements. And so for example, if I click on body, do you see down here, it's showing me what the background color of my body is. And I can actually kind of, if I want to just test and change it a little bit on the fly, if I put in a different color, right? So that didn't change my web page, but I can sort of experiment on some styling sometimes. So this elements section is useful for that. We'll be using the console for some other things, but it's important to be able to use those dev tools, and we'll be learning a lot more about them in your lessons. All right. And so that is just a very beginning get started, right? You see here, first web page here, if I open up that folder, it now has these two files in it, index.html and style.css. Everything is saved because I'm using autosave. And every time I update it, I will see that over there. All right. So make sure again, your your job now, what you need to do is make sure that you um, set up a text editor, VS Code or Sublime. Make sure you have the Chrome browser. You should test, play around with this and set up a folder and just put two little basic files in it and see if you can show your first content on the web page. Oh, I didn't actually show you here. You remember what I put in the title? That's what I see here in the tab, right? Notice when I refresh that, it goes back to what's in my file. When I typed in something here, that was just kind of a temporary, let me test out and see what will happen. But if I wanted to actually keep that, I would have to change it in my file. But this title, so see if I change it to my first web page. Again, it updates and you can see the title there is my first web page. All right. So have fun getting your coding environment set up and you'll be building your own web pages very soon.